Hello again. In this video I'll talk to you about the days 14 to 40 of the Roadside Colonies VR project development. You are going to be aware of some of the challenges of VR standalone development, mostly me complaining about optimization, but you will see the portion of the real world that inspired the creation of this game, the Mexican Navy military zones. Well, at least the habitational units. That's something that you can see in Google Maps satellite view, so there's nothing off limits here. Days 14 to 31. First mechanics implementation. At the beginning, even with the conceptualization work and the list of things to do, there were just so many elements over the table that I wasn't able to prioritize and focus. So I decided to just open Unity, create the plane to work as the floor, and to add the default OVR camera rig game object from the meta libraries, to feel that I was doing some sort of progress. And executing the project on the headset using Oculus Link, that was problematic itself, but being there in front of that infinite canvas for the first time, it was something exciting. Even when it was just the player instance with a box collider preventing it from falling to the void. Then I spent the next few days working on the hands and the gun. The idea was to generate several interactions, to grab the gun from a distance, hold it, load it, fire it, and throw it away. Programming the gun, grabbing and holding was as easy as checking if the hand and the gun were colliding, but grabbing it from a distance required finding the forward direction of each hand, and it was a problem, because I imported both hands completely rotated and with the origin displaced. So casting rays to check if the gun was grabbable was harder than it had to be. At the end I stopped looking for the hand directions and just created child objects with the proper orientation, and this became a recurring thing, because it was a sequence of trials and errors, from working the models and animations in Blender, then exporting the effective assets and dealing with the consequences manually in Unity. Things like textures not being applied and animations displacing or rotating models in unexpected ways. That made me learn how to animate and model directly in Unity to fix small issues as they show up. During those days, I spent a week in Zapotiltic, a small town in Jalisco, Mexico, where a portion of my family resides. And as I'm not able to carry my entire workstation to every place, I advanced in my laptop, looking for assets and doing some research about terrains in Unity. It was time to replace the gray plane from the scene. But once back home, I tried to follow the tutorial and even my PC wasn't able to handle the load, so probably the VR headset standalone wouldn't either, due to the grass and the tree instances. That's something that I figured out lately, but that was my first headache of the project. I failed trying to create a well-optimized tree in Blender and a speed tree. A single tree instance was enough to decrease the FPS to a single digit, so I decided to move on and start working on the inventory system. The trees will be a problem for me in the future, but a hint about the solution is to keep the vertex count low, to reduce the quality of the textures and to enable GPU instantiation. About the inventory system, bag and pocket functionality was pretty simple to implement. Basically the same as holding the gun, but the pocket position relative to the body was challenging, especially because I just have the head position as reference. But I found the solution in multiple VR games. It is just about placing the belt in the same position and rotation as the head when the game starts, and to not move it or rotate it until the head trespasses a certain movement threshold. In the case of rotation, 45 degrees on every side, and about position, if the head moves outside a radius of a fraction of the distance unit. At this point, something started to click, and I finally started figuring out ways to implement multiple elements of my roadmap. I understood pathfinding, post-processing, illumination, terrain editing, and more, so I felt some kind of deep fulfillment. But that will vanish pretty soon, when I started working on the first relevant art task of the project. Days 31 to 40. Reproducing home. During the first 22 years of my life, I lived inside Navy habitational units. Then I left and my father retired, so I cannot go back to where I grew up. So many memories that reside in those places, like climbing trees, running through the houses, swimming in the pool. Well, they even have the elementary school in there to give you an idea. And I wanted to reproduce the colony where I lived more time. At least the oldest version I can remember, before the general remodeling and tree chopping. For this, I started with my house. It was easy to remember the layout, I lived there for more than 10 years. So I opened Microsoft Paint and drew it. But when I assigned the image to a plane in Blender and started working on the house, oh man, it was hard as hell. I wasn't sure if I wanted to follow a modular approach or what the heck I was doing, so I just started placing one cube at a time, editing manually every corner and assigning a new material to every object. That, by the way, it is a really bad practice. I suffered through it until I started feeling off, and that's when I decided to share my advances with family and friends, cohabitants of those old spaces. And remembering, laughing, and seeing their amazement on the project motivated me to keep working, though the most of them were more interested in the 3D work than in the game itself, but it was enough for me. And after a week I completed 2 house models and an apartment, that with some copy-paste and the stairs structure to connect the groups of apartments, it became a full building. Then, the next week I started working on reproducing the colony layout from Google Earth's historical imagery, and making a lot of optimization work. I was paranoid on the house models. I started chasing every chance to decrease the vertex count, until I found out about occlusion cooling. But that's something to cover in upcoming videos. If you want to check the latest updates on the project, check my Reddit. And to support this effort, give a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.